Today, we're previewing the Chicago Bulls' upcoming game versus the Philadelphia 76ers. We're also going to be talking a little bit about their last game versus the Atlanta Hawks. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're going to start talking about this last game versus the Atlanta Hawks, and then we'll go into the preview for this upcoming game versus the Philadelphia 76ers. And so generally, I get a chance to hop on the post game and talk about it. And so I have been under the weather. That is why I missed that and the last couple days. And so I'm hoping everybody out there is having happy holidays. And so let's go ahead and let's jump into it, starting with this Atlanta Hawks game. And so the Bulls were able to go ahead and make it 4 in a row by beating the Atlanta Hawks. And I always like to start with really the points that describe the game. And so I had 3. And so the first one being that there was really no resistance for the Bulls, I think, throughout this game until the fourth quarter, because I think the Atlanta Hawks were really able to get whatever they wanted off the bounce. They were getting a lot of backdoor plays as well. And the Bulls were giving up a lot of points in the paint. In fact, the Atlanta Hawks scored 18 of their 35 first quarter points in the paint. So they were getting everything that they wanted from the Chicago Bulls. And really, I just think that the Bulls struggled there throughout the game until the fourth quarter, where they really just started to lock up. And so the next thing that the Bulls struggled with was turnovers. And so the turnovers in that game, 23 points off of the Bulls' turnovers versus the Atlanta Hawks. They only gave up 7 points off of their turnovers. And so I think that really that is why the Atlanta Hawks were able to stay in control of the game so much, is because they were really able to capitalize off of just the mistakes for the Bulls. And that is something that they have struggled with from time to time this season, is the turnovers. And lastly, this team was clutch. And so I got to give them a ton of credit. They hung in there and they got back into the game. And so now they are 11-8 in clutch moments. In fact, they got their first lead with a minute 20, or second lead, excuse me, with a minute 20. And that was the first time that they had led in the game since they were up 18-16. The Hawks were up by as many as 18 points in that game. And also, too, like the Bulls, I believe, are part of the most won possession games in the NBA. And so that just kind of lets you know, what it comes down to in clutch time for this team. And so they have been very comfortable there. And so the Bulls, they were able to hold the Atlanta Hawks to just 18 points in the fourth quarter after giving up 30 plus each quarter. And so just talking about how this team was able to lock up and finally show some resistance. And they only led for 2 minutes and 6 seconds in this game. And so the Atlanta Hawks really controlled this game quickly with the bench scores. 39-36, the Bulls led there. And then also, too, they had 19 second chance points in that game. And so the Bulls, for the first time this season, the Bulls have won 3 in a row on the road, and that is 9 wins with 2 points or less. And so, congratulations there for the Bulls in making it 4 in a row. Some of the players that really stood out, and just talking about them briefly, Josh Giddey got the triple-double in this game. He did struggle with the turnovers along with Kobe White, but I love the fact that he was able to get the triple-double, excuse me, and really set the table here for the Bulls. And so I believe that is actually his 7th of the season, 25th for his career. And so Josh Giddey continues to take a step forward for this team. And what I like most about Josh Giddey and his efforts against the Atlanta Hawks is that when Ayo Dosunmu and Trae Young got into that little dust-up, Josh Giddey was right there in the middle of that along with other teammates. And so that really tells me a lot about him as a leader. And so I love seeing that with Josh Giddey. And then speaking of just players that I think continue to take a step forward for this team, I loved what I saw from Modest Buzelis with the 15 points in that game, 6 of 8 from the field and 2 of 3 from downtown. And what I liked about his effort is just really you see a lot of the swagger. And so I thought that he had a terrific dunk there over Luke Kennard. And then also, too, he was kind of jawing at the Atlanta Hawks a little bit. And so I love that type of, swagger from Modest Buzelis. And he is starting to really be a player that I'm just not worried about him, when he struggles in a game and everything else. I think that there's a couple players on this roster that I don't worry about. It's Kobe, it's Ayo. Josh Giddey certainly has become that player. And I think that Modest Buzelis is quietly becoming that player too. And so I think he's having a lot more ups than downs this season. And so it was just good to see him, kind of show the swag out there. And so I love seeing that. And also, too, I got to give a big shout out there to Ayo Dosunmu, because I think that when Ayo Dosunmu got into that, dust up there with Trey Young, excuse me, I think that that's really where the game changed. I think that the Bulls came together as a unit, and I love seeing that they stood up for Ayo Dosunmu, and I love the response from Ayo Dosunmu as well. He did not like what Trey Young was saying to him, and also too, he didn't need to point to the bench and everything else, as Ayo was just going to the bench, and so I loved his response. I love the team's response, but I do think that was really like an energy changer for the Bulls there late in that game. And then Kevin Huerter, I got to give him a ton of credit too. Really coming in off the bench, I thought that he knocked down some timely shots for this team, and he continues to show that he's more than just an offensive player. Like, he's also showing you that he can go out there, he can get you boards, and defensively, I think that he brings a little bit of that grit and toughness as well. And so I'm loving what I'm seeing from Kevin Huerter, and I love the fact that he's really settled in this season. And also, too, quickly, I'll give a quick shout out there to Zac Collins. I thought that he was great, really, with his floaters and things like that, and his rim protection. In fact, he had the one good block shot there on Zachary Rizichet, and he also got fouled on that play, but still he showed the rim protection and continues to really play well off the bench for the Bulls. And so that was the game that led us to this game coming up against the Philadelphia 76ers. And the question is, can the Chicago Bulls really keep it going? And so they do, have an interesting challenge here ahead of them, because at the time of this current recording, I believe the Philadelphia 76ers are 5th in the Eastern Conference. And so, this is a team that has really put it together. And I think that they are probably starting to really, I think, ascend a little bit more now that they have Paul George back. And so, I know he's on a kind of a minutes restriction, or they're taking him out of the back-to-back. I think at the time of this, he's not going to play in this game, but still, they're starting to get the full strength. And so if they can figure things out with Embiid, I think that they are a team that certainly becomes a dangerous team. And I think that with what they have with VJ Edgecombe and what he's been able to do, I think he's been a pleasant surprise for this team. And Tyrese Maxey continues to take a step. And so the Bulls are going to have to lock up in this game. I think that is really the key. As you look at the ratings there, you see that the 76ers 11th, you see that the Bulls are 23rd. And I think that for the Bulls to take a step forward and really get out of this play-in situation and really start to be taken seriously, they're going to have to step it up defensively. And I know we talk about personnel and everything else, but a lot of that is going to have to come down to effort, until this team really gets better with its personnel and everything else. And so they're going to have to maximize that with the effort, and you're going to have to make sure that you're doing all the little things right. So you can't allow players to just get to the back door. You can't just allow players to get to the paint easily. Like, you need to help out each other as well. And you can't get into situations where you're just switching early. And so that's something that is talked about a lot, during the telecast. If you listen to Stacey King there, he talks about how this team really doesn't show very much resistance when it comes down to switching. And so, now, just kind of looking at some of the team leaders for the Chicago Bulls and the Philadelphia 76ers. We just talked about Tyrese Maxey, and then there's also too Drummond, who has been terrific for them as far as being a rebounder and everything else. So we know that, as he used to play for us. But, with the Bulls, you have Kobe White, who I think is starting to really come on. I think that he's really starting to turn the page, from these calf strains and things like that. And so I'm curious to see, can he get back to that player that we saw at the end of the season? And with Josh Giddey, look, he's been great. I think that he's certainly, ascending to an all-star level. We'll see if he gets to that this season, but man, he's playing at a high level. And I think he's certainly taken a step forward from last season. And so we want to see some more of that. The Bulls are going to have that if they're going to win this game, which leads us to the past game against the Philadelphia 76ers. Look at that score. 113 to 111. I would love to see this team get back to playing that type of defense. And so that was really huge for this team early on in the season, was their ability to lock teams up, and really teams were struggling to knock down the three ball. And so they have got to try to find a way to get back to that effort. And also to remember in the previous game that the Bulls were able to really make some key defensive stops at the end of this game. And so this team has got to get back to that. And then when you look at the Philadelphia 76ers, we talked about this a little bit, but right now they have Paul George listed there, but I'm not sure he's going to play today. I think he did play in that Christmas Day game. And so does he play in back-to-back games? We'll see what happens. This is the projected starting lineups here off of NBA.com. And so that's obviously subject to change. And then also too, some of these may change too as well, because Embiid with the knee, and then also too, I believe with Dominic Barlow, he's dealing with an illness. And so, for the Bulls, their projected starting lineup, you have Kobe White, you have Josh Giddey, Isaac Okoro, Modest Buzelis, and then also too Vooch there as well. And so one of the things that I want to add about Isaac Okoro is I really think that he's starting to catch a rhythm offensively. And so I know it's been a struggle for him, but I do think that there's still a path for him to really have a better offensive season than he's ever had with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that he's going to get the looks, and I think it's just about him knocking them down, because the three-pointers are going to be there. You can see that the defense doesn't necessarily respect that. I do think that Isaac Okoro will lock in and knock those down. And I'm loving what I'm seeing with him as far as being a slasher. I think that he's done a great job as far as finishing in and one situations and being strong, going to the rim. I think the biggest thing for him is not to get into foul trouble and stay on the floor. I think that a lot of times that has thrown him off as far as his rhythm and everything else. But I do think that if he's able to kind of get some things going, that is going to help the Bulls just that much more, as far as just not only this game, but also too for the rest of the season. So, this is just previewing this upcoming game. We will be talking post game. Also, too, one of the quick things that I wanted to know, just a quick injury report. This is also too subject to change. This is off of NBA.com. Dominic Barlow is listed as a game time decision with an illness. So is VJ Edgecombe. Then also too, Embiid is listed as a game time decision with a knee. Quentin Grimes, he has an illness as well. And then Kelly Oubre Jr. is out with a knee. And so that is the injury report for the Philadelphia 76ers. For the Bulls, they don't have anybody out there except for Noah Asenge. And so we'll be talking post game after this game is up. We also have the latest trade intel and rumors around the Chicago Bulls. We will have that video dropping as well. That's probably going to drop a little bit later towards the end of the game. And then we'll be coming back with the post game. And so I'm hoping that everybody's having happy holidays out there. Again, I was out due to being under the weather. And so just glad to be back and talking about the Chicago Bulls again. And so we will be talking soon post game. But in the meantime, look, go Bulls. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.